I'm here to tell you stories, and the first story I'm going to tell you is something that happened to me a long, long time ago when I was young. I was a young man. This is a long, long, long time ago. Now, back then, we didn't have TV and radio, and we didn't have the internet. We didn't have iPads and iPods and you name it. Yeah, they were starting. But my job then was to go from town to town and bring people the news. So I would leave in the morning with my lunch, and I would walk from Orleans to, say, Navan, and did you know Mrs. Smith's cow had twin calves? Or did you know Mr. Leduc's barn burnt down? And people would give me a place to stay and some food. Now, and I really enjoyed that job. Now, one day, I'm in the Enchanted Forest. The Enchanted Forest is the most wonderful, beautiful place in the world. It's absolutely amazing. Like in the Enchanted Forest, the sky's always blue, but there are rainbows all over the place. And there are millions of birds of every different color, and they'll come and land on your arm and on your shoulder, and they'll sing you songs. There are trees, tall, 6, 7 stories high. And in those trees, every kind of fruit you can imagine grows in them. Apples, peaches, pears, strawberries, raspberries, mangoes, pineapples, you name it, everything grows there. But the thing is, the trees are so high, you can't reach them. You can't reach the fruit. But that's not a problem. You just hold your hand out and you say, oh, I could really eat a papaya right now. And a papaya will come down into your hand. There are flowers all over that are actually marshmallows. The streams and rivers are actually nice, cool fruit juice, apple juice, grape juice, orange juice. And the fish in the streams are actually like gummy bears, but they're fish. Gummy fish, that's right. Swedish fish. Okay, so we'll go with Swedish fish. Now, I was having such a wonderful time. I'm sitting on a rock looking at this thinking, oh, I'm so lucky to be here, when all of a sudden, in the distance, I heard a voice, help me, please. So I ran as fast as I could, and there's this old woman who's being robbed by 3 robbers. I ran up, and I grabbed them by the ear, I twisted their ear, I kicked them in the bum. Now, you can only do that in stories. And I chased them away. And you leave that old woman alone. Do you understand? And like all bullies, they ran away. Now, I didn't know, but the old woman was actually a witch. But she was a good witch, because you have good witches and bad witches. She was a good witch. And to thank me for saving her, she gave me this little stone on a gold string. Little stone about that big, and she said, anytime you're in danger, you can use this stone to save your life once. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really believe in this magic stone. But it was really nice. It was super light, and you could turn it around, and it looked like it changed colors. And the little gold rope was so nice, like very strong, but very light. So I just put the rope around, the chain around my neck, and I forgot about it. And I had it there for years and years and years. Never took it off. I'd wear it in the shower, you name it. Now, several years later, I'm going to this little town, but it was late afternoon. And I was in a really bad area, a place you don't want to be after it gets dark. there's bandits and the bad wolves and all kinds of evil creatures. So I wanted to get to the town before dark. The only way I could do this was to cut through the malevolent forest. Now, the malevolent forest is a horrible, terrible place. The air is polluted, brown, gray. The trees are all dried up and like this, and the roots come out of the ground and they trip you. And there are spiders in the trees, spiders as big as cats, and bats bigger than geese. The stream, a goose, and the streams are all polluted, and there's these mushrooms that grow. If you step on them, they smell like a rotten old fart. Oh, terrible, terrible place to be. So I'm going as fast as I can to get out of here, and all of a sudden, I hear whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. This huge dragon lands in a little clearing right near me. He's as long as 3 school buses. Evil, great big spiked ball at the end of his tail. I hide behind one of the trees, and the dragon blows his fire and reduces it to a little handful of ash. So I run behind a great big rock, about the size of this bookcase over there. One swipe of his tail, and he reduces it to sand. Now the dragon's looking at me with a smile on his face. I'm really hungry. How am I gonna eat you? Barbecued? I might make a sandwich. Maybe a stew. Nah, I think I'll probably just eat you raw. Now there's nothing I could do. I couldn't run. I couldn't fight this dragon. But all of a sudden, I felt a little tugging at my neck, and I looked down, and the little magic stone was glowing like crazy. So I thought, well, it's now or never. So I closed my eyes, and I held up the little stone, and I said, magic stone, if there's anything you can do for me, now's the time, because, oh boy, I'm going to be a toothpick for this dragon. And I heard a clap of thunder and a rumbling noise, and nothing. I opened my eyes, and the dragon was gone. But where the dragon was, there was this stick. So I picked up the stick, and the first thing I noticed is the stick weighs absolutely nothing. Well, there's something magical about that. And I start looking at it, and I can see the dragon's eye. And I can see the horns on his nose and the spikes on his back. And he used to have a big horn here, but it fell off. And on the other side, there's a big scar he had on his face where he fought with another dragon. And I could even see his evil smile. So that's when I knew that the magic stone had turned the dragon into this stick. Now, since then, I always have the stick with me, or it's locked up at home, because I wouldn't want a wizard or a witch trying to turn it back into a dragon. We have enough trouble in the world today without another dragon running around. But my story's not quite finished, because then I figured I would go back and thank the old woman for giving me the magic stone, the old witch. I went to her house, and I knocked at the door, and she had a daughter about my age named Linda. And we fell in love, and I married her, and I've been married to a witch for almost 46 years now. Now, most of the time she's a good witch, but she does have her days. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of my magic stick. Now, after we're done, if you want to come, if you don't believe me that this stick is magic, you can come and weigh it after we're done the other story, okay? Okay, now, I'm going to tell you another story that was told to me by my grandfather. It happened in northeastern Ontario, a little town called Gogama. Now, this happened in the early 1920s. And in those days, the people that were cutting the trees, the lumberjacks, would go and live in camps for 5-6 months at a time, away from their families. And you had cooks that prepared the meals and cookies that they did the dishes, peeled the potatoes and stuff like that. Now, the cook was a little guy, a young man named Tsija. And now the foreman, the supervisor, the manager of this logging camp was a horrible, terrible being. His name was Malicious McDevil. Tall, skinny, black hair, black eyes, but sometimes they would shine like with fire. Never had a smile, cruel and mean. And on the logging camps, they had horses that pulled all the logs out, and they had big dogs to scare the bears away. And he used to beat them and torture them. He would, just a terrible, terrible person. Now, Tsija is planning the menu for the month of June. And he goes to see Malicious and says, boss, this month is Saint Jean-Baptiste Day. Now, the Saint Jean is the biggest holiday for French Canadians of the year. And he says, could I buy a couple of bags of brown sugar to make some pies and maybe a nice big ham so we could have a party that night? Malicious said, no parties in my logging camps. As a matter of fact, I'm cutting your food budget by 10%. And on this Saint Jean Day, only 2 meals. Poor Tsija was, what am I going to do? These poor men work so hard, and they're going to be so upset. And that night after supper, he takes one of the big dogs and goes for a walk in the forest. Now, as he's walking, the dog starts getting very nervous. It's a big dog. And he sees these little fireflies through the trees. And he walks up, and they're not fireflies. They're just lights twinkling in the night. And a whole bunch of these little characters about this high are sitting around this mushroom patch. Some are sitting on the mushrooms, and they're chattering away like little birds or animals. And he's looking, and the dog is just shaking like a leaf. And he's watching them, and he gets an urge to cough, but he's got to be quiet. So after a few minutes, he couldn't hold it in, and he coughs, and a whole bunch of the little gnomes ran away, but a few stayed, and the oldest of the bunch starts walking. Oh, who are you? Well, my name is Tsija. And who are you, sir? Well, my name is... Well, I can't tell you my name because he says, my name takes 86 years in the human language because our names are our life story. But he says, you can call me the eldest. Oh, okay. So they invite Tsija over, and he sits with them, but they're all like, they're that high, and he's as tall as I am, maybe a little taller. So he didn't feel comfortable. So he ended up laying down like this, and he put his chin down on his forearms, like that. And he's talking to them, and they spend the night just talking, and he's eating fruit and nuts that he's never tasted before, and having a great time. They're drinking some sort of a drink, like they called it a beer, but it wasn't like beer, and it wouldn't get you drunk. It was just really nice. Tasted kind of like honey. And so he spends the whole night. And when the dog was going just crazy because he was so scared, and the elder came up and whispered something in his ear, and the dog just laid down, and he was no longer afraid. So when the sun came up, Tija said, oh, I have to run back to camp. Malicious is going to tear my head off. And he runs back to camp, and Malicious is, oh, terrible, terrible mood, and, you know, just being his usual self. So that night, after supper, Tija goes back in the forest. Sorry if but this is very, very warm. So Tija goes back in the forest with the dog, and he finds the little gnomes, and they spend the night talking again. And one of the gnomes says, you know, you humans are terrible. You're destroying the forest and polluting the lakes. And well, Tija says, look, we have to cut trees down to build houses and make paper. No, 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 he said, you've been doing this for thousands of years with no problems. He said, it's just lately you seem to be destroying everything. Well, Tija says, you know, it's our boss, Malicious McDevil, that they all jump up. Did you say malicious? Yes. Why? Tall, skinny, black hair, black eyes, evil, evil character. Tija says, yeah. Oh, he says, that's not a man. He said, that's an evil being that used to live on earth thousands of years ago. He says, we had a war, and I thought we'd annihilated them all with the great eagles and the mountain giants and us. I guess he must have survived. Tija said, yeah, he's terrible. And he says, like, a few days from now, it's our biggest holiday of the year, and he won't even let the men have any kind of a party, and I really don't know what to do. Well, the elder says, look, if I remember right, they drink a vile, evil, horrible poison in the mornings. He said, yeah. He said, it's so bad. He said, when the cookies wash his cup, it burns their hands. Yeah, I know. Well, he says, he gives them a little leaf with a kind of a powder inside. And he says, you put that in his drink on the morning of June 24th, because that's Saint Jean-Baptiste, La Saint-Jean. And he says he will sleep for 24 hours. But it won't be a restful sleep, I can guarantee you. And he says, that night, you come and meet us at the beach on Lake Matagami. And he says, we'll have everything ready for a party. He said, the only thing we won't have is meat, because we don't eat meat. Well, Tija says, that's okay. One of the local butchers gave me a nice big ham I can bring. So, okay, so we'll see you at the shores. But the elder says, the only thing is, the only one that'll be able to see us is you and the dog. The other humans won't see us. Okay. So the next day, which was the 24th, Malicious walks in, and he's in for him, a fantastic mood, because everything was terrible. I mean, the men were going to work even harder. They were only going to get 2 meals that day. And he's just, worse than the Grinch that stole Christmas. You know, like that kind of a horrible person. So Tija, when he's not looking, puts the powder in his cup of whatever it was called. And Malicious starts drinking it. He said, oh, well, I'm getting tired. Well, Tija says, boss, why don't you go have a nap? He says, I'll clean everything up here. I'll make sure everything's done. And you go rest. You've deserved it. And he's smiling inside when he said that. And Malicious goes to bed. And he falls asleep. And he starts sweating and trying to scream. And you can tell he's having all kinds of nightmares. Or daymares, I guess, because it was middle of the day. But anyways, he couldn't wake up. He couldn't move. And Tija went about his day, and all the men are really depressed and angry. And Tija said, no, don't worry. I've got a surprise for you guys. Do not worry. So that night, instead of having their supper, because all they'd had is breakfast and lunch, Tija said, okay, men, let's all, and I say men because back then it was almost only men that worked in those camps, okay? And let's head down to the beach, and I've got a surprise. So they go down to the beach, And there's plates of fruit and nuts and bread and even cheeses and this drink they'd been drinking. And there's a big pile of driftwood to make fires. And wow, the men had a fantastic, lots of food. And they brought out a fiddle and accordion and harmonicas, and they sang and they danced and they laughed all night. Then when the morning the sun came up, the men, oh no, now we have to go work all day and Malicious is gonna, oh no, what did we do this for? And they go back to camp and they're all scared, but says, I wouldn't worry too much about Malicious right now. They get to the camp and Malicious is just waking up. But he's no longer the evil, terrible creature that he was. He's all shriveled up. He's shrunk down to about that high. His hair is white, and he's all wrinkled up. Now, when the dogs and the horses saw this, they decided, oh, we're going to get ours now. So they chased him off into the forest. Now, a few days later, the owner of the logging camp came and said, where's the foreman? Where is Malicious? So all the men told him a little white lie. They said, well, he tried to steal all our money and run away with the payroll. And they said, Tijan's the guy that caught him, and he ran off into the forest, and we haven't seen him since. So the owner was so happy that he made Tijan the foreman. Now, from that day on, the men produced twice as much because they were happy to go to work. Tijan took really good care. He was really nice to them. And he would go to all the little towns around and tell the people, look, if you're going to go hunting or fishing, don't take any more animals than you need to eat. And don't pollute. And all the company made so much money with all this extra productivity that they hired the people to plant 2 trees for every tree the loggers cut. So the forest became sustainable. It kept growing new trees. Now, we never saw Malicious after that. Nobody has ever heard of him. Nobody knows what happened to him. And Tijan went on to live to a ripe old age. He was the foreman of the camp. He never saw the little gnomes again. He really looked for them, but he never saw them again. And since then, La Saint-Jean is the most important holiday, super special holiday for all French Canadians in Ontario, well, all over Canada. But for here in Ontario, for us Francophones, it's got a really, really special meaning. And we have big parties and shows and picnics and barbecues to celebrate La Saint-Jean. And now you know the story of Saint Jean-Baptiste Day in Ontario. And I thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Ruth Stewart-Verger, and I am telling you stories from the beautiful, unceded, unsurrendered lands of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I'm going to tell you a string story because it's something that happened just the other day. We have a lot of children in my neighborhood. 3 kids came to my house and they told me, all dressed up in costume, that they were going to have a party. One had a long tail attached to his back, and he had pointed ears and whiskers, and he said, meow. I bet you know what he was being. Well, another one of the children had a long purple robe on and a crown upon his head, and he was, you're right. There was a third child who was wearing the biggest feet I ever saw, bigger than flippers, and a red nose that blinked on and off. He had the funniest hat. He belonged in a circus. But they had one other friend whom I'd never seen before, a long black robe and a pointed hat. And then that hat, it seemed to dance. This child told me that it was possible to make a magic broom. All you need to do is go to the bottom of the garden, pull out the biggest root from amongst those roots of the tree, and then you need to make it stand in the moonlight. Reach into the root, pull out the sap, the life essence of the root, and then you have a magic broom, if you say the right magic word. If you say the wrong magic word, of course, it turns into a very stinky fish. So if you get a string, tie it together, then you can make your own magic broom. It's very easy. You go down to the bottom of the garden. Start off thumbs, baby fingers. Can you see how that string crosses the palms? And your palms are facing so that you could clap. The index finger goes to the palm string of the left hand. The right index finger, thumbnail underneath the string, pulls back, and it twists around once and twice, and it comes out. Remember, it was in the moonlight. And then with the other index finger, the left index finger, you reach into that hole or that loop. You go underneath the palm string so that the palm string is lying against the fingernail of the left index finger. And then you pull it out. The index finger that did all of that incredible twisting, that stays on. It's the one that almost looks like a snake's head, that loop. The other two strings drop down off your right hand, and you've got a broom. Have fun with it.
Ottawa StoryTellers is an organization that promotes the art of storytelling in our community. The organization helps nurture and inspire both beginners and experienced storytellers, and also provides tellers and listeners of all ages with opportunities to come together to share and enjoy their stories. You can join Ottawa StoryTellers for workshops, learn how to improve your storytelling, or attend their live and virtual storytelling festivals. To find out more, go to their website at ottawastorytellers.ca and ignite your imagination.